Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Light Leadership Diaries, episode number 9, part 1. We've got a fantastic audience. You guys there at home listening, but just as better a panel that we have today, Thabani. We say this every single week. Mm-hmm. We're really excited about today.
Yep.
In terms of the caliber of the people that we have, the conversations that we're going to be having, and most importantly, as the audience, like I say to you every single week, make sure that you've got a pen, paper, your iPad, your iPhone, whatever it is you want to use to capture the next 30 to 45 minutes, please, because a lot of things that are going to come out of this session are things that you're going to want to document, you're going to want to review, you're going to want to go back to and really use in your life, in your workspace, in every single area. So Thabani, we're here again.
Yeah, it's for a lack of repeating, we always repeat this and say we've got amazing guests. We do. We've proven it so many times already that, we've got amazing guests. And once again, I think we're going to have a firecracker of a conversation with people that obviously we admire and we really respect from different industries, which is excellent because we want to have these conversations that hopefully will help you at home. And yeah, really excited for this conversation. We've got obviously 2 guests today, Tolo and Nomdeni. And generally, how we like to start the show is basically we have each of you introduce yourselves to the audience, and then we introduce you to the audience. Sometimes there's a difference in terms of how you introduce yourselves and how we do it. But we always find it fascinating, and as we go on, you'll understand more why we do that. So I don't know if you want to do a ladies first, or we want to switch it up this time around.
I think Nomdeni she's burning. she's burning to start. So I think it's only right.
I'm not burning at all. It's always such a difficult question because it always depends on the context in which you're expressing who you are. But maybe for this particular scenario, I am Nomdeni Mdaki. I'm a mom of 2. I prefer to group myself under entrepreneurs who are impactful. I'm fascinated by impact entrepreneurship, if it's a term that even exists. I just thought, the kind of entrepreneurship that the space I want to play in is the impact space. And I'm the founder of a platform business called Agenda Woman and a marketing consultancy called Edis Communications. And I will leave it at that.
As usual with high performers or top achievers, always underselling themselves off. So I will give you a bit of a background on Nomdeni. So Nomdeni basically got a marketing diploma from the University of Johannesburg. And then after that, she worked at MultiChoice as a client services representative. She did that for about a year and a half. And then after that, she moved on to Discovery, where she was a client services manager.
I think I was a customer
relations manager.
You're taking it back. I think I was there for like 2 seconds.
But you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
And then after that, she co-founded Fuse Academy. And for those who may not know, it was a DJ school. Specifically focused on female DJs, and just 2 names that came out from that school that I know of personally. Miss Prue, I think, is one of them. Miss Cosmo is the other one who came out of that school. And then I think about 2 years after that, that's when Edis Communication came about, which was a second foray into the entrepreneurship. That's a second business that she started. Which basically was more, I think at the beginning, aligning more the youth. They call it celebrities, but I would say personalities with brands, and some big brands that she's worked with. Unilever is one of them, as one of the big brands that she's worked with. And then after that, I think you found you created what we call the Edit Talks. That's around 2016, which is basically around wanting to create a platform for entrepreneurs who are female, really creating them a space for them to have conversations and, just to have potentially giving each other direction and having a place to connect. But then that transcended, into a realization that it's not just about entrepreneurs, but actually even corporate working women wanted a space that was safe where they can connect with other females. And then that's when Agenda for Women came about, which is an online platform as well. That is a safe space that's been created for females to have those conversations and connecting, with each other, which I found really great. And she's a moderator. She's a speaker. She's really, and she's worked with some of the biggest, I think, just celebrities and personalities in South Africa, and continues to be a trailblazer. And really respectful of this woman. It's going to be a tough one today because, like I said, she's also a moderator. So I don't know if she's going to turn some things back to us. And look, highly respected. And I'll just go quickly into just some of feedback that we've received about Nomndeni, because we tried to do some research that way. And some feedback that we gotten was you're South Africa's very own Oprah. Very I know you're not hearing that for the first time. A trailblazer, a woman who's really passionate about the female empowerment agenda, and who seems like that's your purpose, in terms of really driving women. And this Agenda Women platform really has helped a lot of women, and a lot of women find comfort in having someone to do that. One great description was from a friend, said, if I lose Nomndeni at a party, I will always find her sitting somewhere in a corner, surrounded by young women who are hanging on every word that she's saying. And it's testament. I mean, we've when we met. In fact, a few seconds ago, but it feels like I've known her for a really long time. We've already had so many discussions prior to this. I just want to read something because someone specifically said they want, which is the first, they want to be quoted on this. Yeah, but I'm not going to mention their name.
I will find out.
So they said, a woman on her own has power, yes, but together we have impact. So strange she mentioned that. And I strongly feel that is what Nomndeni is doing through her bold, insightful, instructive, courageous platform, giving women practical tools to access our personal and collective power and leverage each other to have impact. She's one of the sharpest and most spirited people I've ever met, and her commitment to this purpose is admirable and so needed. I am proud and privileged to call her a friend and an ally. And I think that really sums up, it's a feeling that I've gotten just in the few interactions that I've had with you. So yeah, I don't know what you think. That's the feeling.
Wow, is this me? Honestly, feels like you're speaking about you. Like that was so amazing. That was really incredible. I'm not gonna rate it because of what I rated. That was incredible. Thank you so much. That was really. I wasn't expecting that. You have conversations with a lot of people, but that really had a lot of effort, and I appreciate it. And I think that does capture a lot of what I stand for. A lot of what I hope I continue to represent. And it's interesting that this conversation is going to kind of move towards a direction where we actually speak about how does all of this come together. So I think it's beautiful. It makes me think about those moments as you're talking through that particular story. Just it really is quite challenging, to pick. To align with a purpose that is bigger than anything you've seen yourself, but to continue to be driven by a vision that you just cannot, that does not give you peace. So I often think it's a privilege to find that alignment very early on in life. I'm 36, and I think I've known this for some time, but geez, getting to that part where you say, this is it, and I'm committing, because it almost feels like you need to say that out loud. You know, there's so many things, there's so many ideas, there's so many projects. But for me, it was the day I said out loud, and I often speak out loud when I get to a point where I have to completely engage with myself. I have to say it out loud, and there was a day where I said, this is it, this is what I'm committing the rest of my life to.
Yeah. And it's evident. It's evident in the impact that you're making.
Yeah.
And that you'll continue to make in the future as well.
Thank you.
Over to you, Mike.
Our next guest,
Yes.
Tholo Lerotodi Makgaola. My brother, please introduce yourself to the audience.
What can one say? No, thank you very much, Mike. I mean, so my name is Tholo Makgaola. The name is Lerotodi. I'm known as Tholo. Kimona Mosotho, very proudly. Father of one. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. I'm a brother. I'm an architect by profession. So from that, I've got a passion for the built environment and for design as a way to actually express oneself. I'm also the president of an organization called Institute of Black Property Practitioners, which looks at advocating for the involvement of Black people in the built environment. I think you'll understand in the South African context that it's very, a lot of our industries are kind of very white dominated. The built environment is a sector that impacts us all. I mean, if you look around the skyline of Johannesburg, all of the tower cranes that are going up and all of the buildings that are coming up, and then you actually realize that Black people, being the majority in this country, are actually minimally involved in the development of these kind of cityscapes that we're seeing. So it's a passion that I really have for the advancement of Black people, and I think really that's kind of like the journey that I've picked for myself of transformation.
I just want to say this to the audience. Tholo has really undersold himself. And I think it's my job. I wouldn't be doing my job justice if I didn't tell you who Tholo really is. So Tholo Makgaola, as you said, he's proudly Mosotho from Lesotho. Tholo went to school in Matjhabeng High School. And what people don't know about Tholo is that he was a hell of an athlete. He was a fantastic goalkeeper.
Yeah, it takes way back.
He was a fantastic goalkeeper, with his hands, and which makes sense why he's an architect. So, he was a runner. In fact, he was a runner. In fact, I think today he still holds the record at Matjhabeng High School for the 1,500 meters, where the people that were able to see him said that he sprinted that 1,500, which was 7.5 laps. He said he was going so fast, he didn't stop for it. He was just sprinting around. Yeah. And he probably still holds the record. Tholo then from there went to University of Free State, and then from there then he ended up in PE. And PE is very close to his heart, as much as he's a Lesotho, but the Eastern Cape, he really fell in love with the Eastern Cape, where he studied at UPE, which is now called Nelson Mandela, or the Nelson Mandela Bay University. Yeah. He got his master's in architecture, and that's where his journey and his career started. I have to read the stuff because it's important that I really make Tholo proud and people know as an audience what he's done. So Tholo served in senior leadership positions at prominent commercial architectural practice SVA International, as I mentioned, which he started in Port Elizabeth, and then he moved to Johannesburg offices, becoming a founder and partner at 472 Studio Group. A very young and dynamic infrastructure advisory consulting firm, which is anchored in architectural design. Tholo has also gained experience in facilities management consultancy, which is he's become invaluable in the design development process of the architectural solutions he provides, as well as a consultancy in the PPP space. As he mentioned, he serves as the president of the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners, where the main responsibility is to provide strategic leadership to the board, as well as to ensure that the mandate of driving transformation in South Africa, specifically in the property sector, through policy advocacy, education, training, enterprise support, and development. Tholo, he is also an avid bike rider. So I remember when you asked him to come onto the show, and I even said to him before he said yes, I said, I know Tola's a Saturday. You're probably riding your bike. He said, hey, I'm gonna have to tell these guys I can't ride this morning. So Tola loves his mountain bike.
The guys did give me the okay to come.
Oh, okay. I'm very glad. A father to a beautiful, beautiful girl, a fantastic husband. Tola has really paved the way within the architectural space. And a lot of people wanted to say many things about Tola.
Yeah.
And some of the things that the guy said is, Tola is a very, very loyal person. And he holds, the people that he loves very close to him. They say if you want to see Tola emotional, play music and give him a Savannah. That mixture will bring Tola to his knees.
I know exactly.
Tola has a very big heart, and he's all about seeing the progress of specifically people of color owning property. He was on, I think it was E! News last week or 2 weeks ago on CNBC, where he advocates, that every single person of color should have a roof over their head. And that's part of his big why. Tola, despite some of the challenges that he's had growing up, and I've known Tola for quite a long time. Tola used to have a stuttering problem. Like he used to stutter really bad.
You're taking it way back.
And for somebody, who's had to overcome that to be in the position where he is, where he talks to people, he's on TV, he talks to media, you'd think that would be a hindrance. But instead he took that, on and said, how do I, knowing that this is what I need to do, how do I overcome that? And there's many other things which we'll get into that Tola has overcome in his journey. But Tola is a very strong personality. He's got a very deep voice, and often people will mistake it and they'll be, very shook. But once he opens his mouth, you'll see even when you interact with him, he's got 1,000 things that are happening in his head.
They said 5 million.
At any given time.
They said 5 million.
Oh, 5 million. Oh, my bad. And then how he gets the burst of flying formation, you'll find during the show. But very impactful, and he's done amazing things in the property as well as in the architectural space. And I know that this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, my brother.
So Tola, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So on that note,
Yes.
Tola, can you just tell us a little bit about, how you got to, where you are? Because your journey is, we spoke a little bit about, who you are and where you come from, etc. Yeah. But how did you get to where you are right now? Even though this is not the pinnacle, this is still...
No, 100%. I mean, look, I think this is still part of a journey.
Right.
I think I still stop and wonder if this is where I need to actually be. The property space for me has actually been kind of, so maybe I'll start at the end and I'll kind of take it backwards, kind of where I am right now in terms of policy advocacy and the transformation of the sector itself. Came from, so when you're an architect, you're a service provider, and I think one needs to understand that there's a kind of bigger value chain, and for me, one of the things that I'm also passionate about is actually networking. I mean, I'm constantly talking to people and I like meeting people, and so for me, it was a very easy way of actually going out there and actually engaging with my clients. The idea that we kind of sit on our laurels and think that work will come to us, that just doesn't work. So you actually need to go out there, you need to interact with essentially people who are your clients, understand what process actually needs, what things need to be put into place for the work that you are then given to actually be created. So that was kind of on the property side, and on the architecture side, it was I never considered myself a creative. I kind of always make the joke. So universities will always ask you for creative portfolios, and I didn't have an artistic background at all. University of Port Elizabeth was the only one that didn't ask me. They just wanted my matric results. So it seemed like an easy choice, and what I knew is that I was always creative, and I remember having the conversation with my father wanting to do advertising, and he just said, "But what are you going to do with that?" And I think at the time, I didn't have the answer, and he said, "If you want to do something creative, go and do architecture." So that word just kind of stuck in my mind, and I kind of went down that road, very unconvincingly. I mean, you mentioned that I was at the University of the Free State, where I was, where I started doing architecture, and I dropped out. I mean, and it took me about 5 years. I was a croupier in a casino. I worked at a petrol station, pouring gas for some time, until eventually I had to get myself into the right frame of mind to say, what is it exactly that I kind of want to do? You know, it was. I mean, you're saying that we've known each other for a very long time, and I was watching my peers kind of progress, and I'm kind of stuck in this place. You know, mind you, I'm having fun at the time. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, I'm not regretful of any of the experiences that I've had. But I think when the decision came to say, you know, you need to actually decide what it is that you want to do, and I thought, you know, I was told that when I was in the University of Friesland, I was told that I have a knack for this architecture thing. So I thought, maybe let me go and try it again. And, you know, I was actually quite proud. Obviously, if you look at the statistics, I think when I started first at the University of PE, there must have been about 25 black people. At the end of my third year, there was 2 of us who graduated.
Wow.
And at the end of my master's year, I was the one from that cohort of 25 at the very beginning. I mean, and it's a 7-year, it's a 7-year degree. So, having not figured yourself to be a creative, and have to and to constantly just be seen to be going forward. You know, I think one of my mottos is always fake it till you make it. You know, and as long as I've surrounded myself with people that believe in me, because I think that's for me is very important. You know, the kind of energy of the people that surround you that rubs off to say you can actually do it despite what you think of yourself. So for me, it's actually been something very, very, very important. So when I was telling you that I know exactly who was talking about that Savannah, you know, and we were talking about this earlier on, this whole idea of your strengths come from your vulnerabilities, you know, and nurturing your vulnerability for me, I found is actually what actually makes you stronger. So there are specific people that I do have around me, because that specific person I know said when you've got your Savannah, I can't get a word inside this, you know, because I'm always, you know, and I do have 5 million things going on in my head, and I think I am quite expressive. I'm quite expressive generally. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question as to how do I find myself where I am right now, I think number 1, my networks. Number 2, surrounding myself definitely with people whose positivity rubs off on me, but definitely people that believe in me, and relationships that I've definitely nurtured over the years.
And I mean, just on that, you speak about the 5 years after. So you've started and then you drop out, and then you spend 5 years.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, we'll get to how you came to the decision to say now is the time to now go back, you know. But how do you, what self-talk are you having at that time when you're seeing all your friends? I mean, your friends technically in the normal world are progressing, and potentially you're feeling like, I'm just stuck. I don't know what I want to do.
No, 5 years is a long time.
Because 5 years is a really long time.
It is a very long time. I mean, look, so I think you kind of oscillate between various kind of emotions.
Yeah.
I think for me, the one thing that I've always found important is just your grounding. You know, I think if there was one thing that I've always been fortunate about is, and I'm very, very big on love. I'm quite an emotional person myself. You know, and I think being loved, for me, has always been the key to never looking down on myself. So as much as, and I think at that time you kind of understand that, you know, people have their different journeys. And the reason that I say I'm not regretful of that 5 years, and of course hindsight is always the best side. Of course. You know, and you see the experiences that you went through. I mean, I remember working as a croupier where I just remember I didn't even know what this. I mean, it's roulette, and I just remember that there's a wheel and there's a ball that these, and then I went for this interview, and I was a croupier for like 2 years. I dealt blackjack and dealt roulette, and I got seen it in some gangster movies. I think, you know, when I was growing up, I never figured that I'd do something like that at all. You know, so things are happening. You know, but I think the kind of experiences that are shaping you. And I think if I hadn't taken that 5 years, you kind of wonder which path would I have taken, and sometimes maybe life slows you down intentionally. So there is and I think there was, I mean, there was a very close guy to me at the time who actually ended up committing suicide, who motivated me to to actually go back to Varsity, and I spent a lot of time with him. And he kind of took me under his wing, and he was almost like an older. So I'm a firstborn in my family, so I've never had like an older brother, and essentially that's what he then came to represent to me. And he was the one that just kept having these pep talks with me. But like I say, I think it's about knowing yourself. I know that I am lovable. So
That's nice.
So when people give what you know you're worth, you know, it only cements that idea of yourself to yourself. You know, and I think you do lose hope. You do feel bad, and you do ask yourself, you know, kind of like why. But I think for me, it's really just been about believing in yourself, you know, and that's obviously come in various forms.
And I mean, for you, Nomden, the one thing that struck me is that, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives.
100%.
And it feels like for you it was just clear from day one. And strangely enough, I mean, the other day you spoke about on your Instagram live or Instagram post about not waiting for perfection to do something, you know. And so for me, like the decision to say, you know what, I'm leaving the corporate world and I'm starting just Fuse Academy, which wasn't unheard of at the time. Just to start a school. I mean, it's a school. Ultimately, at the end of the day,
DJing,
and you're not a DJ. You know, and you're being very deliberate about who it serves. You know, and at that time, there are not many DJs, and female DJs that I even knew of. You know, and so just that jump and the decision making to get to that and saying, actually, I'm jumping off. I'm starting this thing. How did that come about?
You know, for me, I know that one of the traits that I do have, and I won't say it's my superpower, but when I think about my grandmother, who was a very powerful force in my life in influencing how I see the world, she was always, you know, the energy that Winnie Mandela had, you know, that force of, you know, when you think of when you're just like, there's nothing that will take it down. When you just imagine her, my grandmother carried that energy. You know, I grew up in a family of, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. I grew up in Newcastle, Emataten. But my grandfather was from a Mamelodi and my grandmother was from a White City. And they started off, my grandmother was a nurse, my grandfather had a standard 2 education, which is grade 4 today. And they started off selling at the corner in Mamelodi, and then they ended up having this massive shop. This is a story I hear, obviously I wasn't here. They ended up having this massive shop, but because of the uprisings, it should be around 1979, the shop was always getting burnt down, you know, and they started feeling like, this has nothing to do now with everything else. It was really like they were being targeted because they were building this businesses. It's the funniest thing when I hear this, that my grandfather had a friend who was a rap at BAT. I'm like, in that, a black man who was a rap at BAT, and said, listen, there's a small town in Natal called Newcastle. I think you can take your family there and you guys would be able to build and you have a peaceful life. And that's what he did. He moved the entire family there and managed to really do quite well. I was raised in a 24-room house, you know, 12 bedrooms. But, you know, I didn't know what it was until I stayed in a 2-bedroom townhouse. So I wasn't quite sure. I didn't know what all of it was. But until I stayed in 2-bedroom townhouse. And I could feel that I'm not comfortable here. But they did quite well. And at some point, they lost the wealth.
Wow.
We were stuck in a massive house with sometimes not even knowing what we're going to eat for supper. The impression outside was always perfect. They have, oh my gosh, if I could stay there. And I can't say that it did not influence how I saw the world, being in the space. And that's why I always say, you know, and I go around when I speak, I'm going to come back to exactly what you said. The impact of the Black community existing in the spaces that they do is massive for how we see ourselves. I recognize that because I had space, I just move very differently in the world, in terms of boundaries, in terms of how I engage with other people. Space is a big thing. Privacy is a big thing. And you see it in how the Black community engages with each other, some of the challenges that we have. You know, emsebenzini, sometimes they'll say, you know, when you ask the white colleagues to do stuff, they will say no. And they'll say, I can't do that. It's just not something that I'm able to do. But you find that a lot of young Black people overcompensate because number one, there's no boundary. And number two, there's just always a need to prove ourselves. But we don't understand also the impact of space and just boundaries and that particular conversation. So even though we didn't have at some point, I recognize the impact that the space and the impression that people had of me made on me. My grandmother encouraged me to read a lot. My world to this day is just the big world. It's the dream. And I meet a lot of people when it comes to also, you know, personal spaces. They just, a lot of times I've been called naive, but I think that naivety is what makes me bold. Because for me, I'm just like, why would it not happen?
100%.
Why would it not be possible? Why do you think we can't do it? I say, let's do it. And it goes back to the reason I took around 2008 when I had my second child to leave my job. And with no financial strategy or business plan. Zintle, who's a DJ, and we grew up together in Newcastle. We actually met at school. We're chit-chatting. He says to me, you know, I've been thinking about doing a school. And I'm like, oh, okay, really? And she said, yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about. The next thing, I found the venue. I have found a license for us to have to teach. I come back to her and I'm like, okay, so we're doing this. This is where the school is going to be. I got the license from DJ Mixcloud at the time. And I'm like, okay, so we're having meetings now. There's like this excitement. But the reason I was drawn to that is because maybe the entrepreneurship thing isn't me. I don't know. When I think about my grandfather, although I didn't have conversations like that growing up, there was just no one who had a 9 to 5, which in itself influenced how I see the world.
Absolutely.
Just, I don't see the point of things being done in a particular way because someone did them that way. I'm very, very curious, you know. So I tell my now ex-husband that I'm leaving my job and I'm studying at school. And that's what I did in 2008. But I knew that I wasn't employable. I think that's the word. I wasn't employable. I was always curious about the big decisions. The reason I went to MultiChoice was because it was a South African company and I knew the story. And that's what intrigued me about the business. It wasn't the actual job, it was the business. And it was the same with Discovery. I was just like, I have to meet Adrian Gore. You know, I was intrigued by the business story. I remember there was they ran some competition where you could sit with the executive team. And at the time, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a boardroom. I was like, I can't remember. I started Fuse when I was 25. So I was quite young. And I was selected to be part of that cohort that was going to help the executive team understand what's happening on the ground with the business. And then my manager says to me, no, we can't take you because you're not the best performing person in the team. I wrote my resignation that day. And in 30 days, I was out. You know, and that's how I left my job. I always knew that I was not in the right place. I always felt stifled. I always felt like there was no space for me to explore and share my ideas because in a very similar way, I'm very expressive and curious. You know, having a job where I'm doing the same thing every day kills my soul because I love learning. So that's how I left my job and I started the school with Uzinhle. When we started it, it wasn't going to be a girls' school. It wasn't going to be for girls. The more we spoke, and I remember Timothy Maurice was the first one who planted the seed that, you know, maybe it might be worth it to explore women. And we thought, because we both studied marketing, I actually persuaded her to study marketing because I got to university before her. She was supposed to do IT. Imagine, there's no way she would have been a DJ.
She did her first IT
you know, so she wanted to study IT because she was always smart. And I'm like, IT, what do they even do there? I'm doing marketing. I'm going to put in the application for you. Because like I said, Dan Hauser at the time and I came up to Joburg first. So now we're excited and we're building a school. And when Timothy said woman, we're like, nice marketing story. You know, that was the beginning of it. But when we got into it, looking back now, you know, the dots always connect when you're looking back. And I'm doing Agenda Women now. And I recognize that was the beginning of my curiosity around woman and what was happening. I always had strong women around me when I was growing up, you know, fearless
and you're a strong woman yourself.
You know,
Yeah.
and I had no context into what other women are dealing with. Because I was not fearful of men, I was not fearful of the world. But when I started getting these girls into the academy, as much as they came in for wanting to be DJs, the reason we don't have a lot of them in the market is because I recognized that music was therapy. They came from tough backgrounds and they were using music and they fell in love with music because it was therapeutic, not because they wanted to be DJs. So we started including life skills as part of the program. And I would always say to them, even if you don't become a DJ, this is what you need to learn about life and about yourself. And that's really how I got into business. And there's a talk that Elizabeth Gilbert, if I'm not getting it right, the lady from Eat, Pray, Love, gives at Super Soul Sunday about people who struggle with passion and purpose. And she says, follow the breadcrumbs. There's something that you're curious about today.
Correct.
Follow that. Don't get bogged down with the big idea. You know, when you meet me and I say it's woman, you know, don't get intimidated by that and get obsessed by finding the one thing. Follow the breadcrumbs. And I think when I look back, that's what I did. I always followed my curiosity and it always landed me back with woman. So it wasn't a moment where I thought, the thing I want to do with the rest of my life is woman. It's been a long journey of following the things that make me curious. And when I started to connect them, it became woman. Even with Agenda Woman, when I started Eddie's Talks, it wasn't for women, but it was women that came. I think we had one guy who was there with his girlfriend at one of the events. And also through a conversation, this time with the business coach, I get in there, I'm talking, and he says to me at the end, so why aren't you doing something around women? And I was just talking generally about everything I've done and what I'm thinking. And he said, why don't you do something about women? And I said, no, I don't want to be niche in my marketing brain. I was in my brain, not in my heart.
Of course.
Don't want to be niche. I want to make money. What are you talking about? You know, and it took a lot of courage for me to shake hands with my purpose and say, this is what we're going to do, you know, because it meant focus is not easy. There's so many shiny objects. There's so many pretty things that can pull your attention. Focusing is not easy. And it had to be, this time around, it had to be a commitment. Also, I had my 5 years of madness.
It's very important.
I think it is 5. I think it is 5. I also had my 5 years of madness between 31 and I'm 36 today. Actually, between 31 and 2020. 2020 has been the year where I actually made that commitment. It might seem like I made it a long time ago, but this is the year, because before this year, I was still touching the other things and saying, this thing, I know how to do it. I make money easy here, you know, especially with entertainment. I know how to make money in entertainment. I have the track record. I have the respect. I have everything is in place there. But I knew that my time there was done. I knew my time working in that space, in that particular context was done. And I had to sit up and say, I'm now doing Agenda Woman. Not quite clear what it even is that I was doing. But I knew that if I put my effort into it and I make the calls and I call Michael and I call everyone and I say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing, and also I was just worried that people will think I don't know what I'm doing, because that's the fear also. You know, you want to come across in a particular way. 100%. And that makes it difficult to ask for help, because today I said this to Michael, then 3 months later I'm saying this to Michael, but I've become very bold about asking for help, because you are not going to create anything bigger than you if it's just in your head. You know, the multiple people help.
So thank you for tuning in to Leadership Diaries, The Light, episode number 9. If you really enjoyed today's content, make sure that you subscribe at the bottom. And after the subscribe, Tabani, what must they do?
Please hit the bell button so you get notification every time we upload a new episode.
Like it, share it with your family, your friends. And lastly, Tabani,
drop your comments below on what you feel about the episode and any recommendations of things that you want to hear for new episodes.
Usazo by links.
Let me take this